Hopefully this is on right now. Hello everyone, Larissa here, and this video comes to you via Of Houses and Trees, where I blog about sustainable design, sustainable living, sustainable eating, sustainable everything. If that sounds like something that interests you, then follow the link in the description below. And if you are interested in sustainability and creativity, then you should definitely subscribe to this channel. Speaking of creativity, that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. I am going to be making a sign for Christmas to put up in my house. If that's something that you would like to learn how to do for either Christmas, for whatever holiday it is that you celebrate, for any time of the year, this is a really easy way to make those hand-painted signs with the letters on it. So before I get into the actual painting of the sign, I just wanted to show you all the materials that you're gonna have to assemble if this is something that you also want to do, starting with a scrap piece of plywood. So this is just a scrap piece of plywood that we had stored out in the trailer at our land. It was just unfinished and I've already painted it white. If this is something that you also want to do, you definitely would not need to go out and buy new plywood. You can find scrap plywood so many different places. You could go on a local buy and sell. You could ask friends and family if they have any laying around. You could go to the dump. Sometimes they have like take it or leave it sections at the dump where lots of people will put construction materials. This piece here is 17¼ high and 10 inches wide. The lettering that I'm going to be painting onto it, I printed out on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, so there'll be quite a bit of white space around. So if this is something that you wanted to duplicate, I'm gonna link to the image down below so that you can download it for yourself. It also will be on my blog where you can download it there as well. And you could print it to any size that you want to, but of course you would have to have a printer that prints to a bigger piece of paper than 8.5 by 11. You could also print half on one piece and half on another piece and tape it together to make a bigger piece. Or you could create your very own custom lettering to paint onto a sign. And I did mine just on Canva, which is free. I'll also link to that below. It was really easy to do. I used to do everything in Photoshop and I still use Photoshop all the time. But if you don't have Photoshop because it's expensive, or if that's not something that you know how to do or have time to fiddle around with, Canva was very self-explanatory and easy to do. So speaking of the image, this is the image here that I designed and printed out. See, it just says, "How lovely are your branches." And as anyone who knows me or who watches my channel or who reads my blog knows, I'm obsessed with trees. So I really wanted to have this kind of very simple tree-shaped lettering to go onto the sign. Then of course you're gonna need some paint. So this is a ultra low VOC paint that I have had for a long time. I actually haven't used it yet. I was going to paint my daughter's dollhouse with it, but I'm gonna also use it for this sign. Again, you don't have to run out and go buy brand new paint. You might have some paint at home. I'm using, I said gray, but it could be any color that you want as long as it contrasts with the background color of the sign. You could ask friends and family members if they have any extra paint. They also, sometimes people will leave paint again at the take it or leave it part of the dump, or they'll sell it on a buy and sell. And if you are gonna go buy brand new, then make sure you do get either no or low VOC. Not only are the volatile organic compounds bad for your health, they're also bad for the environment. And then you're gonna need some paint brushes, some artist paint brushes. I don't actually know which ones I'm gonna use yet. I might only use one, I might use a couple. Again, I've had these for a really long time. These ones here have a wood handle. These ones here are actually plastic, which I would not buy plastic if I were going to be buying new ones. I know you can get bamboo ones on Etsy and also on Amazon. So I will link to those below as well if you do need to get new ones, but chances are you might be able to use what you already have or find someone that you know that you could just borrow some from. And a step that I have not mentioned yet, which actually will come before the painting, is that to transfer your lettering to the plywood, you need a pencil and some tape. Tape is to hold the paper in place and the pencil is for the transferring. This is a really easy way to get your lettering onto the sign. And without further ado, I'm gonna show you how to do that right now. Okay, so now we are going to transfer this printout onto the plywood, which I've just flipped over so I can use the back of it right now as a hard surface. So I learned how to do this from a different blogger originally, actually, and so I am going to give her credit and link to her blog post down below. But I've used this technique before. It works really well. I used it when I made my love sign that I posted on my blog, and I'll also link to that post down below. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna flip over your piece of paper, start shading the back with the pencil. It can't be a pen or anything like that. It needs to be either a pencil or like a piece of chalk or something like that that will transfer onto your plywood when you are done. Because what's gonna happen is that we are going to shade this all, flip this over on the painted side of the plywood, and then you're going to trace over top of your letters, really pressing hard, and then the back that you shaded is going to transfer very lightly onto your painted plywood, and then you can paint over top of that with your paintbrush and the color of paint that you have chosen. So here we go. Let's start shading. So as you see, you don't have to color the entire back of the printout. You just have to color over top of the letters. And also the best way to do it is to kind of do this angled sort of approach where you're sort of holding the pencil so that the side of the pencil is coloring over top. There, done. So now you're going to flip over your piece of paper with your image on it or your text on it, and you're gonna get your plywood ready. So obviously if you've just painted your plywood, you wanna make sure it's completely dry before you do this step. And now this is when you're going to need your tape, so you can tape your printout in place so it doesn't move around while you're doing your tracing. Okay, so you can just eyeball this part when you place it down, but if you are particular like I am, you might want to grab a ruler or a measuring tape just to make sure that it's nice and centered. And so I'm just using painter's tape because when we go to peel it off, it won't pull the background paint off with it. Okay, now what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your pencil again, and you are going to just trace over top of all of your letters, pressing fairly hard so that the shading on the back transfers onto your plywood. There, all done. Then you're just gonna take the tape off and the paper off. And you should see how the letters are now on the plywood. It's probably a little hard for you to see, but I assure you they are there. I can see them very clearly. And now I'm gonna trace over top of them with my paint. Okay, so I just popped the lid off of the paint with a knife, and I'm just gonna use this paint that's right here on the lid and get at it. So the great thing about these kind of rusticy sort of signs is that if you F up, like, it's all good. Just say, oh, it was supposed to be like that. You just have a lot of room for human error, which of course happens. And so I picked, if you noticed, I picked one of the really small brushes that I had. This is actually the smallest one that I had, because I do want the lettering to be quite thin. And so far it seems to be working pretty good. So I'm kind of approaching this with, I'm doing sort of like shorter brush strokes. You could try and do a longer one so that it's a little bit more smooth, but that I find to be a little bit more difficult to control the paintbrush. I find that if you do the shorter ones, you kind of can just sort of chip away at it, and maybe it looks a little bit more pieced together, not as smooth, but hey, I'm okay with that. great thing about these like ultra low paints is that I can't smell anything right now. So that's good news for those of you who have like scent sensitivities. And there we go. That's it. I'm gonna let this dry and then I will do another coat likely. When you do the second coat, that's usually when you can kind of smooth out any imperfections, make the painting a little bit more even, and it will just darken everything up. But I'm gonna do that off camera and then I will show you the finished product. And here it is, all done and on display amidst all of my Christmas trees. As usual, I'm gonna leave you with a quote from a book about sustainability. This book is fittingly called The Hidden Life of Trees by Wohlleben. And he says, "We shouldn't be concerned about trees purely for material reasons. We should also care about them because of the little puzzles and wonders they present us with. Under the canopy of the trees, daily dramas and moving love stories are played out. Here is the last remaining piece of nature, right on our doorstep, where adventures are to be experienced and secrets discovered." Thanks for watching. See you next time. Ow! Oh! I have just popped. The volatile organic chemical extra bless you.